Hello, welcome. Oop, I need to take off my glasses. Do I look naked with all my glasses? I feel naked. Anyway, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a March wrap up. I read this many books. How many is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 books? Oh, and one online. Was that 9? I think I miscounted. It's fine. We'll count it later and I'll let you know if I was wrong. But yeah, so this month was a pretty good reading month because, we've been at home because, pandemics, and hopefully everyone's been doing okay. Hopefully everyone's been safe and everyone's mental health is good, obviously, but that's all that we're going to talk about it because we don't want to cause stress, so we're just not going to talk about it. That's probably not a good way to deal with things, but that's how we're dealing with it right now. So let's just get into this. So I read an ebook online which was crazy because I never read ebooks, but the libraries are closed, so I have to read ebooks now. And I read, I think it's called Aphrodite Made Me Do It. It's a poetry book and I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars, mostly just because it was good and it was probably one of the better newer poetry, like newish writing style poetry that I've read and actually really enjoyed. It was interesting. Some of the poems I was like, wow, this is so beautiful, it speaks to me. It speaks to me as though I'm so deep. But some of them I just didn't enjoy. Some of them were very overused ideas, but I guess it's 2020, so it feels like many things that can be written about have already been written about properly, especially with poetry. But I enjoyed it for the most part, and I would definitely read more from this author for sure. Now let me get into my second poetry book since we're on the topic of poetry. I read Please Don't Go Before I Get Better, poems by Madison Kahn. I love the title of this book and the cover is just gorgeous, okay? But I did not like this book. I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars because at first I gave it a 3 out of 5 and then I sat on it and I was like, oh, I actually didn't like this book. Because many of these poems are written more like entry styles. They're written like this, and when you read them they almost feel like a diary entry. And I wasn't really enjoying that because I had gotten this with the intention of reading more poetry type things, which, poetry is very, everyone writes their poetry a little differently, so this could definitely still be poetry. It's just not a poetry that I enjoy very much. So I was very disappointed by this book because I thought the title and the cover, I was like, wow, foreshadowing for a great book, and I didn't like it. So yeah, that was a bummer. I think this might be the lowest rating for the month. I think so. Because I really just didn't enjoy it. Okay, now let's get into some books. Some non-poetry books. I read Tom Sawyer, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain. And let me tell you, so I enjoyed this book quite a bit. It follows a young boy, Tom Sawyer, obviously, through his adventures, like the title suggests. And he witnesses a crime, he commits some crimes, he runs away. It's very fun. There's even marriage that happens in this book. It's a crazy little book. Obviously it didn't age well. It's a very old book and there's harsh language towards Black people. We're not going to say it, but you know what I mean. You know what words I'm talking about. And sometimes the way they describe women in here isn't great. Very feminine and very, not bad to be feminine, but very I'm afraid all the time, which I'm sure there's people that are afraid all the time, but does woman have to be like that? But if you look past those things, which may be difficult, just remember when this book was written, you'll probably enjoy it. I enjoyed the action parts of it. I thought it was such a fun little read. Tom Sawyer's a little crazy. I swear he's a sociopath because this boy cares about no one. Let's talk about this. No one. If you've read this, you know what I'm talking about. He really, wow, he lies a lot. He mostly cares about his own emotions. I feel like he likes to make people suffer, so he's not great. I did like Huck Finn. Huck Finn is a really cool character in there. Obviously, Aunt Polly, she's my girl, such a good aunt. She's just a loving woman. I just like her a lot. So I enjoyed this besides the racist parts and the sexist parts because it kind of hurt the reading sometimes, which is why I gave it a 3 out of 5. I think if you got rid of all that, wow, this is a 5 out of 5 read, but because of all that stuff that didn't age well, it kind of hindered my reading sometimes. Sometimes I was like, oh, sis, I'm like, that is not okay. But very old, but I did enjoy it for what it was. Also, this copy is my great grandma's copy, which is super cool. Her name's written in there, and almost I should write my name in there. I don't know. That might be a weird thing to do, but I might do it. Okay, and then the next book, I finally read Daisy Jones and the Six. let me tell you about it, sis. I thought this book was maybe overhyped. I was like, oh, everyone's talking about it, but like it's probably like an overly hyped book. Girl, was I wrong? I love this book. It is so good. It basically just follows. It's not basically. It follows a band, Daisy Jones and the Six, and through, where are they, in the 70s, the 60s? Why do I not know what time period this was? They don't even say. 1979. So yeah, their last tour was in 1979, so yeah, in the 70s, I guess. And oh, let me tell you what, girl, this book was so good. It's done in an interview style, which at first I was like, I'm gonna hate it, but I loved it. It gave me like VH1 interview vibes, if you ever watch those, or like talk about like a person or group and talk about like the progression of that group, the history. It felt like that, and I loved it, and I didn't want it to end. And my favorite character in this book was Warren. He's not like a big character, but he's the best character, arguably. He's just so laid back and cool, and I love it. And I just, oh, I'm so sad this book ended. And I gave this book a 5 out of 5 because it was just such a good book and such a unique book because of the writing style and like the plot. I've never read a book like this, and I just, oh, I hope she writes another book like this because I loved it pretty much. Oh, also, they talk about drug addiction in there, so just be aware of that. If that kind of thing triggers you, mental health definitely gets talked about in there. And I like the way they talk about all of those things because they never made drug use sound like it was a good idea. So I thought that was great because sometimes I think people don't do a good job at making sure you know abusing drugs is not a good idea. Okay, and then I read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It's not this whole book, sis. It's a very little book. It's book 2 of the Chronicles of Narnia, and I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars. It's very short. It's not as epic as the movie would make you believe, but it was still good. I like the idea of it. It's definitely meant for a child. It's definitely a children's book, and I enjoyed it. And I loved Edmund, and I loved Susan in here, which is crazy because I always love Edmund. I think he's such a cool cat. He's great. But Susan in the movie, I hate Susan in the movie because she's always complaining. But in the book, she doesn't complain, which is so weird why they would do that in the movie. I don't understand. Also, in the book, they explain more why Edmund is the way he is, which is beautiful. If you ever watched Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and you're like, I hate Edmund, read this book, and I feel like it will change your perspective. But if you, so you know what I mean? Like, read the book. I would explain to you what this book is about, but I feel like you already know, so I'm not going to. But yeah, it wasn't the most exciting book in the world. I wasn't like overwhelmed with excitement, but I did feel good reading it because I felt like I learned more about a movie that I watched way too much. So, yes. And then the next book is going to be The Horse and His Boy, which I hopefully will read next month because I'm trying to finish the whole Chronicles of Narnia by the end of the year, so let's hope for the best. I think there's only 7 books, so I can afford to miss some months, but let me tell you. Yeah. You should definitely read this, especially The Magician's Nephew. Magician's Nephew is the first book, and girl, it's so good. Alright, so I'm done talking about it. Okay, and then I read The Sociopath Next Door by Dr. Martha Stout. I think that's how you pronounce her name. This is just a nonfiction about sociopaths. She breaks down what a sociopath is, why they're more prone to doing things that are not morally that good. She talks about sometimes sociopaths become murderers, but that's not always the case. Sometimes they become moochers. Sometimes they just become very good liars. And she gives you different examples of them doing such things. I gave this book, I think either a 3 or a 4 star. I cannot remember. I did have some issues with this book. Sometimes it sounded like she hated sociopaths, which kind of, you know, I feel like if you're in the psychology world, you probably shouldn't hate any group of people because it's not their fault that they're sociopaths. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a very sensitive flower, but I'm in the psychology program right now, and I feel like I could not hate a group of people for something they had no control over, so that's just how I feel. And that was my issue with it. But everything else I thought was really nice. She really breaks down a lot of things about it. She also mentions that 1 in 25 ordinary Americans secretly has no conscience. Ooh, it's crazy. And I also was mind blown that most people have probably met a sociopath and didn't know it, or maybe they did know it, but they were afraid to say it. I don't know. But they're like, and she's like, you can't trust a sociopath. Don't let them into your life. That's the type of book this was, is like, don't let them into your life type of thing, which is probably a fair point. I enjoyed it. It's definitely meant to be, it's definitely not like a it's a super educational psychology novel, but it was definitely supposed to be juicy so that like the mass public would want to read this book. So she definitely added some extra sauce in here to make it a little more interesting, but I still enjoyed it and I thought it was great. And she brought up Sigmund Freud and a bunch of other things in here, which I thought it was interesting. I felt like I learned something from this book, so you know that's always good when you learn something. So it's probably a 4 out of 5, but who knows because I can't remember. And then my last 2 books were all from the Backlist readathon, which I really enjoyed participating in. I only read 2 books because girl, school, you know what I'm saying? I'm very busy. Also, I played a lot on my phone during that time, so you know, I didn't always get all the reading I could have got done, so let's not talk about it. But one of the books I read was Ben Passmore, Your Black Friend and Other Strangers. This just follows Ben Passmore talking, like he literally writes himself into the book. It's really great. And talking about mostly racial topics, political topics, obviously, because it's difficult to talk about race issues without talking about politics, and features some other different types of groups in here, which I thought was such a good thing, and I liked it, and I learned a lot. I learned about my own personal prejudices. He basically calls out the whole group, you guys. Everyone's gonna get called out in this book probably. So I can't remember what part though. There's just some parts of that. Sorry. So it was a really good book. I was supposed to read this for my social justice class, so I was like, what a perfect time than to read it right now. So now I'm ahead in class. So awesome, right? And it was a pretty good book, and it's very colorful. Let me show you some pictures. I gotta make sure no cussing is happening on here because there's a lot of cussing. So if you're young and you're not allowed to read cussing books, this might not be it. Or if you don't like books with cussing in it, it might not be it. But it's colorful, and like he's constantly changing the color styles, so it's very aesthetically pleasing. I very much like this book. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5 4 out of 5 stars because girl, let me tell you what, I liked it a lot and I learned something, and if you learn something it must be a good book. Okay, and then I read Rainbow Rowell, Wayward Son. I can never pronounce her name right. It's fine, I love her though. So I finally read this because the Backlist readathon made me read it, and oh, girl, it was such a good book. Now, Carry On is like a book that I'm like, I love this book so much. It's amazing, and I think this book did this book justice. Yes, I took it down just so you could see it. Look how beautiful this book is. Don't forget about Carry On, but I think it's such a good book. I usually don't like sequels, like the second book in a series. I always typically hate it. I'm like, I hate this book. It's just terrible. I don't know why. It's always the second book. I'm just like, I can't get through this. Like Twilight, New Moon ruined it for me. But, you know, it's fine. And, but this book was so good. It starts out kind of like on a mellow tone, which I put it down the first time I read it because I was like, oh, this book is going to be sad. But it's honestly so good and so action-packed, and a lot of character development happened. We learned more about all of our characters, you guys, especially Penny, because I feel like Penny wasn't talked about enough. We learned a lot about her life. Baz had some character development. Obviously, Simon had some character development, and it was so stinking good. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars because I love this book. I love it. I cannot wait for the next book. Cannot wait to read it. But yes. Oh, actually, there's one more book. I lied. It was Cut by Patricia McCormick. I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars. I don't know if this book is, first of all, let's talk about trigger warnings. It talks about eating disorders, let me stop flinging around the book, self-harm, and other things. But those are like the main issues they talk about in this book. Obviously depression. And so there's a trigger warning on that. It's a very short book, and they have so many characters in this book, and she doesn't really develop these characters. Some of them gets a little bit of development, but not really, because it's not a big book. It's a very teeny weeny little book. But I still liked it. A lot of people I think gave it like a 2-star a lot when I checked, and I understood why some people gave 2 stars. But I just love the relationship between Callie, who's our main character, and her psychologist, and the people working within the institution, because I think it's very motivating to why you would become a counselor or psychologist, because it teaches you that you have a very big impact on somebody getting better, and I just like that. I like that a lot, helping them improve and stuff. They don't really finish her story in here, and I don't really know why. Maybe she didn't want to get into that realm. I don't know. it definitely could have been longer, but I definitely enjoyed Callie's and her psychologist's relationship. I don't really know if I'd suggest this book to people or not, unless you have a very, like, you have an interest in that, and like the process of maybe a treatment, even though it's a deep process. It's like literally doesn't teach you a lot about the process of treatment, but I don't know, it's just such a good book though. I liked it a lot, so I gave it a 3 out of 5. I just do wish that we would have gotten a little more character development, more pages would have been good. But yeah, that's it for this March wrap up. I think this month was very successful. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up, and if you're not subscribed, you probably aren't, you should maybe think about subscribing for no other reason than to be nice. I don't know. But I hope you guys have a blessed rest of your week, blessed rest of your day, and I hope you're kind to every soul that you may meet. Deuces, be safe.